The 6 riders step out of their cars, the mansion looming before them like an ancient secret waiting to be uncovered. The air hums with quiet expectation, the kind only mystery lovers truly appreciate. But before they even cross the threshold, something unsettling happens. One of them notices a pair of footprints on the mansion steps. Only 6 people arrived, but there are 7 sets of footprints. They glance at each other, silently counting. Someone was here before them. Or worse, someone is already inside. This moment immediately unsettles the characters, forcing them to question the surrounding reality. Now, let's flesh out the 6 writers, each bringing their own personality and perspective. The arrogant genius, a best-selling author known for their razor-sharp deductions. Confident to a fault, convinced they'll solve any mystery before the others even lift a pen. The cynical veteran, an older writer, once famous, now struggling with relevance, sees through lies and deception but has grown weary of the literary world. The dark storyteller specializes in psychological thrillers, fascinated by the minds of killers. Their quiet demeanor hides a deep knowledge of human depravity. The methodical analyst writes detective fiction with painstaking accuracy, treating every mystery like a science. Can't stand loose theories or unreliable narrators. The romantic idealist, a writer of cozy mysteries, believing in justice and satisfying endings. A stark contrast to the others, but sharp in their own way. The struggling novice, the least experienced, barely published, feels like an outsider among legends, but may have the most intuitive perspective of all. Each of them will approach the mystery differently, leading to conflicts, unexpected alliances, and shocking revelations. Chapter 1. The Invitation. The mansion loomed at the top of the hill, its silhouette stretching against the twilight sky like a relic from a forgotten time. Stone pillars framed the entrance, and heavy oak doors stood shut as if guarding a secret too terrible to reveal. 6 riders stepped out of their cars, adjusting their coats against the creeping chill of the evening. Their careers had brought them here, an invitation from a man none of them had ever met, promising a weekend of mystery and challenge. Each had accepted, too curious to resist. Then someone hesitated. Wait. The voice belonged to Jonathan Rains, the methodical analyst. He pointed toward the mansion steps, his sharp eyes narrowing. There were footprints. 7 sets, not 6. The group instinctively counted their own, then looked at each other in silent unease. Someone else had been here before them. Or worse, someone was already inside. Emily Langley, the romantic idealist, shivered. Maybe the owner arrived early? Victor Hale, the arrogant genius, scoffed. Or maybe this is part of the game, a trick to make us uneasy. He stepped forward, undeterred. The others followed, exchanging glances but saying nothing more. The heavy doors swung open with surprising ease, revealing a grand foyer bathed in the dim glow of chandelier light. Velvet drapes framed towering windows, and beyond them, the vast estate stretched into darkness. Then, as the last rider stepped inside, the doors slammed shut behind them. They whirled around. The entrance was closed, locked. A slow, deliberate voice echoed from the shadows. Welcome. Your challenge begins now. Chapter 2. The Disappearance. The mansion was quiet, too quiet. After the eerie voice welcomed them the night before, the 6 riders had explored their surroundings, each trying to decipher whether this was part of an elaborate mystery or something more sinister. The tension remained as they sat down for breakfast in the grand dining hall, a room adorned with antique paintings, polished silverware, and an unsettling portrait of the mansion's owner staring down at them from above the fireplace. But one seat was empty. "Where's Richard Grayson?" Emily Langley asked, scanning the room. Richard, the dark storyteller, had been the most reserved of the group, watching rather than engaging in heated discussions the night before. But now, he was simply gone. "I saw him last," Jonathan Rains admitted, setting his cup down with forced calm. He was uneasy about something last night, said he felt like someone was watching him. The statement sent a ripple of unease through the room. Victor Hale, the arrogant genius, leaned back, scoffing. This is obviously part of the challenge. He probably slipped away to stage a dramatic reveal. But Julia Mercer, the cynical veteran, shook her head. If this is a game, then why did he leave without a word? They all stood up, moving through the mansion, calling his name. The guest room Richard had been assigned was empty, His suitcase still there, his coat draped over the chair, but his notebook was missing. The air grew heavier. The mansion had locked its doors the night before. No one could have left. And yet, Richard Grayson was nowhere to be found. Chapter 3. The Suspicions. The mansion, once intriguing, had shifted into something colder, its grandeur now a cage. Richard Grayson's absence gnawed at the group, each of them grappling with the implications. Was this part of the challenge? Or had something truly gone wrong? Victor Hale, ever the arrogant genius, seized control first. "It's simple," he declared, pacing the room. "Richard staged this. His specialty is psychological thrillers. He wants us to play his game." Emily Langley, the romantic idealist, shook her head. "Then why leave without his coat or notebook? If it's a game, it's a messy one." Jonathan Rains remained quiet, arms crossed. He'd been the last to see Richard, but the more he thought about their final conversation, the more unsettled he became. "He was afraid," Jonathan finally admitted. "He told me." He hesitated. "He told me he felt like the mansion was watching him." The words hung in the air like an accusation. The group split into factions. Victor convinced this was a carefully orchestrated test. Julia Mercer and Jonathan growing convinced something had gone terribly wrong, and Emily caught between logic and fear. They retraced Richard's last steps, searching for clues. A misplaced chair, a flickering hallway light, the lingering scent of Richard's cologne in the empty study. Then they found it. Behind a heavy velvet curtain, buried beneath stacks of old papers, lay an aging newspaper clipping. The yellowed page contained only a few words, but it was enough to send a shiver down Julia's spine. "Man wrongly convicted. Released after 25 years. The detective who made the error disappeared from public life." The mansion owner's name was there. Faint, but undeniable. A mistake, a ruined life, and now a new mystery unfolding. The realization spread through the group like wildfire. Richard's disappearance was not random, it was tied to the mansion's past. And that meant someone had orchestrated this long before any of them arrived. Chapter 4. The Wronged Man. The newspaper clipping sat in the center of the grand study, its yellowed edges curling as if resisting the weight of time. 6 pairs of eyes lingered on the name printed at the bottom, the mansion owner, tied to a case decade old. A man wrongly imprisoned. A detective who disappeared from public life. And now, a missing guest. Julia Mercer, the cynical veteran, exhaled sharply. It can't be a coincidence. Jonathan Rains, the methodical analyst, adjusted his glasses, scanning the article again. This case, 25 years ago. If the mansion owner had anything to do with it, why invite us here? Why now? Victor Hale, ever the arrogant genius, was already pacing. It's obvious. A twisted test, a reckoning. A way to prove something, to force us into a real mystery. As the tension thickened, Emily Langley picked up the clipping, turning it over. Richard disappeared. And now we find this? What if... She hesitated. What if Richard wasn't just playing a game? What if he's the man who spent 25 years in prison? The room fell silent. The thought was terrifying. If Richard Grayson had been the victim of a botched case, his disappearance might not be part of the challenge. It might be revenge. Then Victor snapped. "It's clear now," he said, voice cold with conviction. "The mansion owner must be behind this, and if Richard really is the wronged man, we're sitting inside his trap." His certainty was like a fire too wild to control. He stormed out of the study, intent on confronting their host. The others called after him, but his pride drowned out their warnings. A crash echoed through the halls. They rushed after him, only to find Victor standing over a broken vase, fists clenched, his face twisted with fury as he loomed over the mansion's owner. "I knew it," Victor hissed. "You planned this!" But the mansion owner, calm and unshaken, just smiled. "Planned what exactly?" The words sent a chill through the group. Victor had pushed too far, too fast, and now the real danger had begun. Chapter 5. The Turning Point. Victor stood frozen, his breath sharp and uneven. The mansion's owner had smiled, not in defiance, not in fear, but in amusement. As if the entire game had played out exactly as expected. The others hesitated at the doorway, reluctant to step closer. The tension between Victor and their enigmatic host had thickened into something dangerous. But who was truly in control? Julia Mercer, ever the skeptic, spoke first. You knew we'd find the newspaper clipping, didn't you? Her voice was edged with quiet fury. This isn't a game. This is a confession. The mansion owner leaned back in their chair, fingers laced together. A confession? They gave an amused hum. That would require guilt, and guilt only matters when there's proof. Jonathan exchanged a glance with Emily, who had paled considerably. Proof. That was the key. Their entire careers revolved around evidence, deductions, logic. But suddenly, they felt as if the rules had changed. Victor clenched his fists. Richard isn't missing. He was taken. The mansion owner tilted their head. Was he? Emily stepped forward. You were the detective on the case, weren't you? Her voice was quiet, but the certainty in it was chilling. You sent an innocent man to prison, and now, he's here, isn't he? Silence. Then, the lights flickered. The shadows of the chandelier stretched unnaturally long across the walls. Somewhere deep within the mansion, a door creaked open. Jonathan swallowed hard. Richard, or the man Richard once was? Victor turned sharply, his fury shifting into something colder. We need to find him. Julia took a slow breath. Or maybe, he's about to find us. Chapter 6. The Final Reckoning. The mansion seemed to breathe, its walls stretching with the weight of unspoken history. Shadows curled into the corners like secrets refusing to be uncovered. The 6 remaining writers stood in uneasy silence, their thoughts tangled in doubt and fear. Somewhere within these halls, Richard Grayson, or the man Richard had once been, was waiting. But was he waiting to be found, or had he planned something far worse? Jonathan Raines tightened his grip on the newspaper clipping. The mansion owner had admitted nothing, but their smug amusement had been enough. Richard had been the victim of a failed mystery, sent to prison for decades due to careless deductions, a wrongful conviction. And now, the real question wasn't where Richard was. It was what he planned to do now that he was free. Emily Langley swallowed hard. What if this isn't just about Richard proving a point, she whispered. What if it's about punishment? The lights flickered again. Then, footsteps, slow, deliberate, echoing from the upper floor. The group turned toward the staircase, every instinct screaming at them not to ascend. But Victor Hale, determined to prove his superiority even now, took the first step upward. The others followed. The hallway stretched before them, doors lining either side. One stood ajar, Richard's guest room. Julia Mercer stepped forward and nudged the door open. Inside, the room was empty, but on the bed sat a single object, Richard's notebook. Jonathan reached for it cautiously, flipping open the cover. The first page was blank. The second held only 4 words, written in slow, deliberate strokes. You failed me again. A sharp gust of wind rattled the windows. The lights cut out completely. And then, a scream, the mansion owner's voice, from downstairs. Something had gone terribly wrong. Chapter 7. The Unwritten Ending. The scream fractured the silence. Jonathan, Emily, Victor, Julia, they stood frozen in the darkened hallway, Richard's ominous message burning in their minds. You failed me again. Then came another sound. Footsteps, fast, heavy, desperate. They bolted down the stairs, shadows stretching long beneath the flickering chandeliers. The grand study, where they had last confronted the mansion owner, was in disarray. A toppled chair, shattered glass, and a single overturned candle casting frantic light across the floor. And the mansion owner was gone. Victor spun around, searching, his breath ragged. Where are they? The group fanned out, panic lacing their movements. Jonathan knelt near the abandoned chair, running his fingers across the polished wood. It was still warm. They were just here. Emily caught movement beyond the study doors, a flicker of white fabric disappearing into the shadows of the east wing. She moved before thinking. There! Someone's there! The group chased the figure into the vast, darkened corridors. Their footsteps echoed. The air thickened. And then, they stepped into a room filled with stories that had never been told. Notebooks. Hundreds of them, stacked along wooden shelves, covered in dust. Some were old, some were new, but all bore the same inscription. Truth Unspoken. Jonathan reached for one, flipping open the pages. Every word was scrawled in the same handwriting. Richard's. This wasn't just a game. This was a life rewritten over and over, as if the past refused to settle. And in the center of the room, resting on the desk, a single chair, its seat still warm. No sign of Richard, no sign of the mansion owner. Just stories. Stories that had been corrected, erased, rewritten, but never truly finished. The writers exchanged glances, realization dawning. This mystery would never close. Because some endings weren't meant to be written,